Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Gould, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town. All right, Tyler Gould, at last. Jonathan Anderson just hung out with us on the Richest Men in Town podcast. We've been tracking this guy down, difficult guy to track down. I love the time that we had with Jonathan. What's bouncing around in your head after our couple hours with him?
Here's the thing, man. You know, like when everyone tells you, like, dude, you got to see this movie. It's a really good movie. And then you finally cave in and you go see the movie and you walk out. You're like, that was not that good of a movie. You know,
the hype rarely delivers.
It rarely delivers. And we've been talking about Jonathan Anderson for a long time. And I got to tell you, like, tonight was a highlight for me.
Yeah,
I loved the time that we had with him. I felt like it was profound. There were some things, like experiences that he talked about, that are still kind of blowing my mind. And so I'm loving it.
I think our listeners will actually hear an auditory gasp in a couple of places.
Yeah. Like I don't want to get into them because they're so good. I want Jonathan to reveal that. But let me just say, when he talks about faith and he talks about not just a faith journey, but just life being a journey, he illustrates that so well in our conversation tonight. So I loved that, Mike.
Yeah, I hate to be trust the process guy. We do talk about some radical and instant transformation, but he is quick to point out there's still a process.
Yeah.
There's a process that he's been going through. There's a process that he's going through now. He is not who he was. Big time changes have been made, but he's still getting to this place. My one takeaway from our time with Jonathan Anderson, hard to choose, just this idea of going to a deeper place.
Yeah.
Like he continued to do work where we would think, okay, cool, here's where the story ends. Jonathan's life changes. Cool. He's good. And there's a couple of times like, then this happened.
Yeah.
And then I took this step. And then I did this wild thing, right? And I just love that idea of deeper place to get to an unshakable faith.
Yeah, and if I could, my one thing for Jonathan tonight, he talks about the other side of conflict being relationships. That sort of rattled my cage tonight. I loved it, man. And there was a few other things he said on top of that, but that really stood out to me tonight.
Yeah, think about identifying where there's contention or conflict in your life and going into that and pushing through to the other side, on the other side of that being deeper relationships. Big journal fan. Listeners are going to hear a shameless plug for Journaling the Journey. He's not the first guest that's talked about the power of journaling, right?
Yeah,
but he actually gets to a place where he looks back on those experiences and he looks at the journal as evidence, not faith. That's a powerful, powerful piece of that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I loved it, Mike. I'm glad that you have the patience to continue to chase.
We're like
Jonathan
the Mounties,
Anderson.
right? We're like the Mounties. We get our guy. So Jonathan Anderson, and we mean it when we say Jonathan Anderson will be back, right? I really feel like this was tip of the iceberg. But man, the things he gets into, even with Michelle, his wife, when she's in his life and family, all of the good things.
It was a beautiful night.
It was a beautiful night. So to Jonathan Anderson, we appreciate you, brother. We love how you show up each and every day and be a piece of a place of hope and of influence in our community up here in Redding, California. We appreciate the Anderson family for all the good that they're doing. And to our listeners, thank you for your support. You're going to love it. We hope that you pull up a chair, enjoy your time with Jonathan Anderson on this episode of The Richest Men in Town. Okay, Tyler Gould, last Friday night, guess what I did?
What did you do, man?
Play-by-play for Red Bluff High School football.
The big leagues. The big leagues.
Up in the press box.
AM. Give a shout out. AM.
KBLF.
The Bluff.
Streaming live on indierock.com.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Coming to you live.
Me and
Paul Freeman.
Cal Hunter coming up on the show here soon. And Darren Nye.
Oh, Darren Nye.
And I shot the URL to Kelly Freeman, and she hung out, sat on the couch, and listened to her man spit it.
And how did it feel?
Red Bluff High Spartans dominated Enterprise High School 41-8.
Oh, not the Hornets with the sad showing.
There's a moment, you would have been proud of me, Tyler Gould. There was a moment where literally I'm in the press box. The sun has set. The scoreboard is in the home team's favor, right? It's pink out in the crowd, so people are going nuts. And I literally say, hey, Cal, is this heaven?
No. This is Red Bluff.
It's Red Bluff.
Oh, here we go. Oh, my goodness gracious. Well, I think we need to find that link. Is it recorded somewhere?
I don't even know. I think I put it out there, right, for posterity's purposes, but it's radio, so I don't even know if it's out there or not. I think they might have a YouTube presence.
All right, listen. We got to get the link. We got to put it in the show notes. We got to let our audience listen to Mike Freeman
break it down, right? Break it down.
Voice of the Red Bluff
Spartans.
I was going to say
Spartans, man. And the only thing I was missing was a sideline reporter on injury updates. That would have been good. Mm-hmm. A real-time stats would have been good, right? And then I just needed that teleprompter with the boom, boom, and I could do the Madden at the circles and the X's. I could have done all that, but
would have been good. You had no one to throw it down to. Hey,
let's
throw it. Let's throw it down to Billy Ingles. Billy, what's going on down there on the sideline?
Give me a sideline report. 18 went out with I was predicting collarbone. How's he looking?
He's looking good. He just needed a little banana, get that cramp worked out, and he's back in the game. No worries.
It was so great. It was
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So is this going to be a permanent gig? What's going on?
He invited me back, but I just kind of put the headset down and walked away. It is like, that was almost like perfection. And I don't want it to be a job, because it's 10:15 and I'm leaving. He's packing up. I'm like, hey, can I help you? He's like, no, we're good. And I'm like, okay, cool.
So you were kind of like that Olympic wrestler on his last match who sets his shoes in the middle and just walks away.
That's it. Right. Oh, when you're on top, that's when you hang them up.
Well, and to throw out another Field of Dreams reference, you're like that kid, the pitcher who just wanted one pitch in the big leagues.
That's exactly right.
Doc Moonlight Graham. Come on.
That's it. One shot. I got the one shot. Yeah. My Spartans won, right? Because that's the other thing. Can you imagine I jump in there and do it again, and we're on the receiving end of a whooping, and now I got to fill in all this time. If we're the 8 and it's the other team's 41, and I got to carry,
nothing better. Like Doc Graham walks away, one hit, and he just says, hey, I did it. That's it.
I did it.
Man.
Did it. And hey, without you, Tyler Gould, that would not have happened, because we were spitting it here on the podcast, and somebody out there was listening. The phone rang. I stepped through the door, crushed it. I'm out.
I love it, man. Well, the only thing that bums me out is I didn't get to hear the fabulous play. Were you play-by-play or color? What do you got going on here?
Oh, I was color, man. I was color. I was butter, dude.
The dream job. That's mad.
The dream job.
Yeah, one butt equals 2 knees, right?
Oh, it's the whole bit. Hey, Mike, break it down for me. What did you see on that play? You kidding me? Let's go. I saw an empty set. The box is empty, Cal. You're going to run. That middle tight end seam has been there all night. You missed it the first time. Don't miss it again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Mike, I'm very proud.
It felt good
to know the man who came out, hit a home run, and laid his bat down in the cage and said, "Thank you very much."
And here's the thing: the home run thing is 100% subjective, right? But in my
Mike,
mind,
no,
I
it
felt like
doesn't
it was
matter.
Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. And I'm not gonna, I wasn't there. I have all the confidence in the world in you, and I believe that was a Hall of Fame performance.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that in the next 5 to 7 years, I get to come up and sit through the Hall of Fame Red Bluff announcer speech and be part of that, man.
Hey, the internet, man, it's gotta live somewhere, right? We gotta be able to.
Yeah,
we gotta
let's
be able
dig
to
that
find
up.
this
Let's
thing.
get our research team on the case. And gentlemen, can you get on that for us and find us a copy of that? Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, Mike, I mean, listen, I'm excited about tonight because I feel like, I mean, I don't want to apply any pressure to our guest tonight, Jonathan Anderson, who I'm really excited about because, quite frankly, Mike Freeman, you and I have been discussing Jonathan Anderson for roughly since episode 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So here we are.
We can actually do the math. Episode 24, we catch up with a guy named Doug McMullen who lays down a classic, right?
Absolutely.
In his interview, he says, I think he even stops and says, "Oh, you guys got to talk to Jonathan Anderson."
I think so. The episode was titled "Be a Leaf in the Stream."
Yeah, and now we're talking episode 147, and boom, we've got him.
147. Jonathan Anderson is here. I feel like, speaking of Hall of Fame performances, I feel like we're in for one tonight.
Well, I can tell you, we want to keep our powder dry, but we do want to prime the pump here a little bit. I will tell you, one day my wife was hanging out at a work event and Jonathan Anderson delivered a keynote. Kelly Freeman comes home and says, "You guys need Jonathan Anderson on the Richest Men in Town." And I was like, yeah.
If Kelly Freeman gives the endorsement, then I'm in, because quite frankly, there has been no confirmation that Kelly Freeman has heard any of our episodes.
You know what she says? You know what she says about this? And I don't know if you get this from the Ricker, but this is what I get.
Okay.
You know what, Mike? I hear it through the door. So like vicariously, I've already lived episode 147. Why do I need to tune in? That's what she says.
Yeah. I think Ricky has the same feeling. It's sort of like when I've had a long conversation walking through the house and I go, "What do you think?" And she's like, "Yeah, I agree." She didn't hear a word I said. Right. It's one of those deals.
Yeah.
So I like it, man. I'm excited to have Jonathan Anderson join us tonight.
Let's kick in the door, man.
Let's do it, man. Oh yes. Here we go.
Jonathan Anderson, I've been waiting forever to say this. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town, brother. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. Thank you.
It is so good to see you. I've been talking to Tyler here. I need to let you know that my wife was at an event where you were a keynote speaker. She's a huge Jonathan Anderson fan. In fact,
no joke.
She might actually tune in and listen to this episode now that you're on it.
It's questionable.
It would be the first one she's listened to.
Yeah, she probably won't, but she does like you.
Well, she heard you speak. She came home and said, "You need to get Jonathan Anderson on the Richest Men in Town."
That's amazing. That is amazing. And you know what's crazy is that I'm very afraid of speaking.
Yo, get out of here.
Come on, man. I don't like it.
No. Is this humble? Is this like you putting on some humble or no? Legitimate?
Nope. I legit don't like speaking, but I have to do it, so I do it.
Well, dang. I love that.
I've heard you a couple of times, and you are very, very powerful. And it's just cool that we got you in the boat, brother, because
man, I'm excited.
Our paths have crossed a couple of times, so it's good.
Well, I got to be honest, Jonathan. We have been batting your name back and forth as a guest for this show for a long time, my friend.
Wow.
So wow. I'm excited that you're here and we finally get to do this. I'm super excited about it. So
it's an honor. Thank you.
Let's start down this humility lane a little bit. Like when we finally do catch up with you and we say, "Hey, we got a podcast called The Richest Men in Town and we'd love to have you on it." What thoughts go through your mind as you hear that invitation?
Man, that's an honor. that is just a huge honor. I appreciate it. I don't, I grew up in just a crazy little life out in East Oakland. And so when people say, hey, we want you on a podcast or we want you to speak, anything like that, it just blows me away, because at the core, it's like, well, who would want me, So it's humbling. It truly is humbling. And I appreciate it. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, we're excited.
Did you see East Oakland coming, Tyler?
No, I didn't, but I'm excited about that, man. So
you see East Oakland coming. That's good.
let's dive in, Jonathan. I would really love to learn about kind of your background, and maybe we go in the Wayback Machine. We dial it all the way back to East Oakland, and we talk a little bit about your upbringing. And can you talk a little bit about family and what that looked like as growing up?
Ooh, yeah, man. And feel free to ask any questions you want. I'm an open book. But yeah, born and raised in East Oakland, California. So I grew up during a time when gang culture was at the peak, and so my influence growing up was really the street life. I had one brother who, he joined the gang at a real early age. I had another older brother who, he started using steroids at a very young age. I think it was 8th grade, 9th grade, somewhere around there. So created a lot of anger and aggression in him. And then there was me, the third child, and then my little brother, who he got the worst of everything, as you can imagine. Yeah, we grew up in the church. My parents raised us in the church, but truthfully, I mean, we went Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday nights, and it was like that's where the cops just knew where to go to find us. So that's really what church was. I mean, we rebelled hard against church. First time that I was arrested, I was in the 5th grade. That's a pretty staggering thing to think about. Why would a child be arrested when they're in the 5th grade? That's crazy. But it was the culture. It was the culture, it was violence more than anything. I grew up this white boy in a predominantly black area. And so a highly diverse area, but predominantly black area. And so honestly, that's where I was most at home. That's where I was most comfortable. Moving to Redding was an incredible culture shock because there's no diversity. I'm not a big guy. I'm not a real big guy. One of my brothers is, but I'm not. And so for me, it was I had to learn how to fight in order to survive. And so, I just learned that if I made a reputation for myself as one of the most violent people, maybe I would gain respect out of fear. People would just fear me. And so they wouldn't want to mess with me. And so that's what I did. Man, I'd bring knives to school, guns to school, chains, any weapon that I could have, I would bring it to school, from middle school all the way through high school. And so obviously I was suspended a lot. I was expelled. I eventually was expelled from the entire school district. That truthfully was just a normal lifestyle for us.
Okay. Yeah. So can I pause here for a second? Because you're a parent, you're a dad.
Yeah.
Right. You think about a little bit, kind of the hell you put your parents through a little bit.
And we talk about it often. My brothers, they started the hell. I just finished it. It's
good to be a finisher, Jonathan. It's good to be a finisher, man.
Right. So we did family counseling. Believe it or not, we did family counseling almost every week, at least once. One time a week. And
how old were you when you guys were doing that?
Honestly, probably about 9 years old.
Okay.
Is when I probably even a little younger when I started it, and it went for years. The problem is, and this is true, the problem is most family counselors would stop seeing us because we would start to physically beat up the counselors if we didn't like them. My brothers and I. And so we just grew a reputation over the years that nobody would see us anymore.
So you did not discriminate when it came to violent acts. It was just anybody, anywhere, whatever.
Yeah, just kind of following the footsteps of my brothers, right? So I wanted to impress them. Yeah.
I'm curious, Jonathan, like from where you sit now, looking back on that time, did you have a sense that your parents were like holding on for dear life? I mean, do you feel like, I just can only imagine, right? Like as a parent now, just kind of being in that situation, like looking and sort of the desperation of it all, right? Like we're going to get therapists involved. We're going to church twice on Sundays and once on Wednesdays. We're doing like everything we can do to try to keep, I don't know, like keep some control or some, you know, some health in these relationships. Looking back now from where you sit as a parent, is that something that's recognizable to you?
Man, absolutely. I mean, my parents tried everything they could. You know, we grew up in a very legalistic church. Just it wasn't healthy. It wasn't good. And they really tried. They tried as hard as they could. But honestly, it was out of their hands. It was in God's hands. That's where it was. And so it took me having a gun pointed in my face and crying out to God and just like, okay, I don't want to die anymore. You know, I don't want to go to prison. And so going to my parents and say, look, I don't want to die. I don't want to go to prison. We got to find a new church. I'm willing to give God a shot, but he doesn't exist in this church we're at. And you know what? They heard that and they said, okay.
Let's go back up. We believe in hinge moments. One of the things that we love talking to people about is this idea that an interaction, a conversation, an experience, you know, hinges turn inches and doors swing feet. Yeah. And this idea of some small thing happening that brings about this huge thing. It sounds like a gun to your head would be a hinge moment. Paint that picture for me. What
big hinge moment, man.
Put you in that situation?
I was at our rivals. I was expelled at the time. I went to our rival school's homecoming dance.
How old are you? Give us an idea. Age? Yeah, age.
Probably about between 15 and 16.
Okay.
I didn't have a weapon on me. I don't know why, but I'm thankful I didn't. I probably would have died. And so, yeah, I was at the dance and I got into a fight. Turned out to be the freshman football team, the whole freshman football team. Fortunately, I knew a lot of the people, so they weren't fighting me. But I was fighting my heart out, man. It was the biggest fight I'd been in. And I wasn't quite winning this fight. But in the middle of it, some real small guy pulled out a gun, stuck it in my face. And truthfully, it felt like time just absolutely stopped. And I was shook to my core, and I just in my soul, you know, I just cried out. I was like, okay, God, if you're real, can you get me out of this situation? Cause I don't want to die. And he did. And truthfully, I believe God heard that prayer and began to just draw my heart to him at that moment without me knowing, you know, it wasn't no heroic way or anything that I, you know, got out of it situation, but I didn't die. And that's when I got home and I just told my parents, okay, like my clothes are all ripped up, I'm bloody, and I just said, look, I will give God a shot because he got me out of this situation. I want to see if he's actually real, but let me pick the church this time.
So you felt some obligation there. That wasn't just a flippant thing like, hey, if you can get me out of here. Nope. You felt like you were on the hook a little bit.
It was real. Like I knew I was about to die, and I knew the moment I cried out that something happened, because there's no way I should have got out of that situation. And due to that, I just said, okay, I've got to figure this out. I've got to find a new way. And that was not me back then. Right. And so I did. Yeah. And we did. We started going to a different church, and there was one person there who invested into my life, began to mentor me, that it changed everything. That investment changed everything. It's what caused me to be who I am today.
Do you remember that mentor's name?
Oh yeah. Bill Smith with one L.
Bill Smith with one L, man.
From Oklahoma.
Bill
This
with
guy,
that's strong, man. That's strong. Bill with one L. I like
he
it.
was something else. I'm gonna tell you what, that guy he was something else. But it was incredible, just the investment, right? So this, I don't know if I'll tell this. He he saw my little brother and I go to church this one Sunday, and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to come up to our youth group?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I don't do the youth group stuff. I'm an introvert. I don't like people. I harm people." Like
Right.
I didn't tell him that, but that's what I'm thinking. I
Right.
said, "I don't do the youth group stuff. No, I'm cool." But you know what? He convinced us, and we went up to this youth group, and and he would start to ask these questions about the Bible and Bible stories. Nobody would answer. Well, hey man, I know every Bible story. My parents taught us all the Bible stories. So I'd raise my hand, which I don't do. I'd raise my hand and I'd tell a story, and then he'd ask another story, and I'd raise my hand, I'd tell that story. By a week or two that go by, Bill's like, "Man, Jonathan is the most godly young man I've ever met." Legit. He told me this years later. He's like, "Man, I thought you were the most godly young man." He's like, "I had no clue what was going on in your life." But he invested. He invested because I was expelled. He was at my house 2-3 times a week. We go to Oakland A's games, Dollar Wednesday games, Eventually he took me out on my first dove hunt. I was the guy who shouldn't have a shotgun, but he took me out anyways, and he just showed me a different way of life. And he showed me a love that was authentic, that was real, that I didn't experience anywhere else. And I responded to that. Yeah.
Man, that's interesting. There's a couple things that I'd love to highlight for a second that I think I find interesting is, I love the idea that, you talk about going to therapy as a family therapy, right? As a young person, yeah. I find that, so interesting that your parents were so like aware, right? And invested in what do we do? And the other thing that, Mike, that I find interesting too, is this idea that you have this traumatic experience, you come back and say, shoot, I need to have God in my life, but not there. It's got to be somewhere else. And the family says, yeah, let's go. Let's figure out where this is going to be then. I mean, I just find that really interesting. I love that idea that it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but it sounds to me like there's an investment by mom and dad in getting you guys at least pointed in the right direction.
Flash desperation, right?
Yeah.
Right? There really was. And I commend my parents for that, because, my 2 older brothers, they had cried out at times and, "Hey, let's go find something else. We don't like this." And they didn't really respond to that. But for some reason, when I walked in the doors that night and they saw me, they knew the desperation in my voice, and they responded, and they said, "Okay." And that was hard. That was hard for them to do, because they left their friends. They left just people who we've grown up with our whole life, and they knew if we do this, we might get ostracized, and they did.
Yeah.
But they did that. And I'm grateful. If they have not agreed to that, I probably would be dead today. I'm like 99.9% sure I'd be dead. That's just the life that I live.
Well, and Tyler, I'm kind of holding this wrestle in my head, because before you jumped on the call, we were kind of talking kids and just getting caught up with life in general. And Tyler, you shared this thought of God recording the little efforts people make.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure there were good people in that church. And there's some church leadership in that church that was probably trying to wake up every day and do right by people, especially young people. But I love this. I love the power of the authenticity you felt in that other space. Right. And I think that this is you could cut this, Tyler. This is going to be the dumbest thing maybe I've said in 147 episodes, but you can't fake authenticity.
You say that again?
You can't fake authenticity.
Wow,
that's great.
That's profound, man.
Right? These people are trying to. These probably people. They're good people in church, and they're trying to lift people, but it's clear that you're not feeling. You're not feeling those efforts, right?
Well, and I love, Mike, this idea of like, and we talk about this a lot, right? We got to meet people where they're at, right? And that's how we can we can affect change if we're willing to meet people where they're at. Bill Smith with 1L, right? I mean, I love that, right? He, you know, beside the fact that he was bamboozled that you were the most godly kid that he could that he'd ever met, you know, but he was willing to invest that time, and that's a big deal. I'm sure, you know, Bill Smith had a lot of stuff going on in life, but willing to say, I see something in this kid. I'm going to give him some time. I'm going to invest in this kid and see where this goes. I mean, what does Bill Smith get out of this? You know, I mean, there's no payday at the end of that road, other than I'm sure he's stoked now, right? You can look at Jonathan and say, dang, this guy, he really, he took off.
Yeah. I'm hoping like Bill Smith probably saw young Bill Smith.
That's
right?
probably right.
He's probably hanging out with Jonathan, and he's probably looking at Jonathan's situation. He's like, I know this story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know this story. I know that what this kid is presenting is not who this kid really is. Let's invest. Right.
Yeah.
Let's figure this out.
I love it, man.
That's pretty powerful. Powerful.
Yeah. I think, you know, we talk a lot about, in this podcast in particular, we talk about honoring people in our lives and the roles that people play in our lives. Right. And I think it's interesting because we travel through life. We have people that come in and maybe disrupt some things in our lives, but there's also a lot of people that come in our lives that have a profound impact, and maybe they don't even know, right? They're just being themselves. They're just wandering into Jonathan's sphere, you know, say something to Jonathan and it impacts some change, you know? And I gotta believe that it's interesting because for you to be able to say, which I commend as well, to be able to, even though it's a literal gun in your face, right? But to be able to recognize that and say, shoot, God, this is where the help could really come in handy. And I'm willing to make changes, but to stick to those changes, Jonathan, is a big deal. I mean, how difficult was that to be where you were at that time in your life and try to transition onto a different path?
Man, tell you the truth, I mean, I wanted it to mean something, and I wanted that change, but I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know what it looked like, right? And so I was just going through the motions. The difficult part for me was being an extreme introvert and trying to integrate into community. That was the difficult part. And it was about 3-4 months of just being in this youth group, and then I'll tell you this quick little story. You know, Bill took us all out to a desert in Nevada, and he wanted us to carry a cross up the mountain, all this stuff. It's crazy stuff. Anyways, he said, man, everybody get alone. Like, go out, bring a Bible, get alone, be in the wilderness. You got 1 hour. I was functionally illiterate, truthfully. Like, I could barely read, and I'd never read the Bible before, and I have one, and I've got an hour. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, well, what do I read? You know, what do I do? And I knew, like, in my head, I knew, well, Psalm 119 is the longest psalm. Hey, I got an hour, I'll read this, right? So I open up a Bible and I start to read Psalm 119, and it says, the subtitle is How the Psalmist Loves the Law. And instantly my heart, I should say, went to all of the people in law who had hurt me, and cops who had framed me. And instantly my heart turns to absolute hatred. I mean, just sheer hatred. So as I'm trying to read, the wind is blowing the pages.
Right there holding the Bible, you're filled with hatred.
Hatred, right? And the wind is blowing. It's blowing my pages, and now anger starts to boil up. And that anger starts to turn to rage, and I just throw this Bible right into the dirt, and I just start cursing God, right? Now remember, like, I'm like, a couple months ago, I'm like praying, like, hey, get me out of the situation. And now here I am in this dirt, just cursing God. And I'm going to tell you, man, not audibly, but clear as day, in the depth of my soul, I heard God speak. And what he said was, Jonathan, what if it's Satan trying to use your anger to keep you from me? And I just was like, okay, if that's the case, then everything that makes me angry, I'm going to thank you for it. And so I pick my Bible back up. I start to read. The wind starts blowing the pages, right? And I just put my hands down and I say, okay, God, thank you for the wind. The moment I said that, I could hear the wind rushing through the trees. And I'm like, oh my gosh, God, thank you for these trees. And in the moment I said that, now I hear this stream, like just this little creek in the background. And I'm like, wow, God, thank you for this. My heart turns from a heart of anger to a heart of praise. And now it's postured in such a way where what I'm about to read, my heart's ready to receive. And for some reason, I was able to read through all of that Psalm 119. And what I realized, it's not a law of oppression. It's about a law of freedom.
Yeah.
And right there, I was like, I just experienced God for the first time in my life. Man, I ran back to Bill, to the group. And I just said, Bill, I have to tell everybody I had an encounter with God, and it was real. Right. So from that event, that's when I went home. And when I went to walk into my bedroom, man, I stopped right at the door, right at the threshold. And I could see the whole life I had been living portrayed in my music, portrayed in my clothes, portrayed in everything. And right there, clear as day, I felt like God saying again, okay, Jonathan, you've tasted what life with me could be like, and you've tasted what life in this world is like. You can't be on the fence any longer. You have to choose one. And that's where I just broke. Man, I broke. I fell to my knees and I'm just bawling. I'm probably about 16 at the time, and I'm just bawling. And right there, I just said, okay, I'm giving my life to you. You can have it. It's all yours. I don't want it anymore. You do whatever you want with my life. Just let me know that you're using me. And there was such a radical and instant transformation. I kid you not. Such an instant transformation. When I got accepted back to the school the next year, I'd walk in. Oh, this is hard to say, but I'd walk in and people would say, are you Jonathan Anderson? Like, of course I am. Like, we grew up our whole lives. What do you mean, am I Jonathan Anderson? And then they'd preface something awful I had done. Are you the same Jonathan who? I'm like, yeah. Well, how did you change? How did you change, right? People didn't even have the opportunity to test the waters to see if my life had changed. When I'd walk into the room, they just knew the whole countenance of me was so much different. And that, how did you change? Such a drastic change. The principal came to me and said, look, if you're willing to tell the whole school how you changed, we'll hold an assembly. And it was my first public speaking. I didn't want to do it, but I just knew, like, hey, if people have the opportunity to hear how God could change their lives, I want them to hear it. And so, yeah, we held an assembly, 3,500 students, public school. And I got to tell them how God changed my life.
Holy cow. Okay. Do you remember that assembly? Like, do you have a memory of like speaking?
I do. And this is why. And we just moved. And so I found this in moving, but I do because there was a Christian club at the school. And when they heard that I was about to tell my testimony, just how God changed my life, they went and made these t-shirts and posters that say, I agree with Jonathan, with the day and the time of the assembly. And they didn't consult with me, right? They just made these and they're wearing them around and people are like, hey, are you the same Jonathan? Yeah. What are we supposed to agree with? I'm like, I have no clue. Like, I don't know.
Wow.
I might not even get up and speak, right? Like I'm terrified, but we did. And this is what I remember. I'm speaking, and I'm terrified of speaking, but this is why I love it today. I'm speaking, and I was just praying beforehand, God, like, tell me what to say. And at the very end, clear as day, in my soul, I heard God say it. This is what it means to agree with Jonathan. And so I ended by saying, look, everybody knows me. Everybody knows how awful my life was. You cannot disagree that my life has changed. But it's up to you if you want to agree or disagree that it was God who changed my life. And I was like, I'm telling you, I couldn't do it. Only God could. So if you agree that it was God who changed my life and you want to know how he could change yours, come up here and I'm going to pray with you. And there was about 200 students that came up and I prayed with about 200 students. So yes, I remember it. And I just found one of the t-shirts that say, I agree with Jonathan.
All right, that's boggling my mind because I feel like an assembly today where a kid gets up and talks about God is a tough sell, dude. That's a tough
Never
sell.
happened. It would
Right.
never happen, right?
Wow, that is amazing. And that's in Oakland, right? You're still in
Yeah,
Oakland at this time?
So I switched schools. And so that was at San Leandro High.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Just one street over.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, okay. So like, I'm actually getting like, almost like, Tyler, like, why me, God? Like, I'm slow of speech. The people hate me. Why are you calling on me to be a prophet? Right. And I think that this idea of an introvert in front of 3,500 kids, when honestly, I know a little bit about high school kids. All you want to do in that setting is don't be the nail sticking up.
No, you want
to hide.
Yeah.
What are the kids wearing?
In.
That's what I wear. Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be that. And before you told that story, I was going to be like, okay, where does the godly Jonathan who knows all the Bible stories become Jonathan who has this faith? And like that's an incredible, remarkable story.
That was the start right there. That's
Thank you.
Started. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill, for the 1 hour alone. Right.
For real. For that, just that whole investment, man. For a lot. It is incredible. I owe my life to that guy. Yeah. I tell him that often. He's probably tired of it.
I don't know if you I mean, because we'll get into what you're doing today.
Yeah.
Right. But like, there's a real pressure. There's a real pressure when you change to go back to where you are or go back to where you were and the people know you as something else.
Yeah.
Like I would often have conversations with kids that are going back to school after making some poor choices. And I would say, hey, they're going to try to push those buttons.
Yeah.
Right. Because kids like to see a show. Right. Yep. Like I just go, something that's bouncing around in my head is just something that Tyler shared. Like change that sticks is really hard.
Yep.
Anybody with the gun to the head can be like, well, yep, I'm a believer. Let's get me out of this. And then we get out of it and we go about our business. Right. But like change that sticks to a soul level, to the bone. You going back into that high school, people come up to you and say, are you the guy that? Right. I mean, I'm actually, that's a very Saul type experience.
Yeah. And change that sticks at 16. Right. Like I feel like that's a different animal to a certain degree. But there is that, like you said, you don't want to be the nail sticking up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Even if you have those deep convictions, that's tough, man.
Yeah. We've had this conversation with all of our guests just about what faith journeys look like. And they're as unique as fingerprints, right? They're beautiful. That's what I love about it. Some are drastic. Some can point to a place, a date in time. And like, this is where my life changed. And some, oh man, I always believed. And some's like, no, I had a grandma, or I had a good mom, or I actually believe that drastic nature was part of his plan to use you.
Yeah.
Right? Like you were night and day different, and you would be an instrument in his hands to share that message, right? Like I think that drastic change is something that was part of the plan. Like I'm going to be able to use Jonathan Anderson to bring some people to make some changes.
Yeah, and can I highlight something, because I'm really curious. The efforts. I want to go back to this idea that the efforts that your parents were making, and the life that you were living. And then yet you have this experience. I got to believe that your parents are like, oh my gosh, like this guy, like he's freaking driving us nuts, right? Like it's trouble. We're, you come on. We've all had these conversations as parents where you're like, we're doing everything and it's not working. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then you have this experience and you're in Bill's youth group, and you're able to recite some of these Bible stories, even though there's not a lot of depth to them for you at this point.
Clearly not written on your heart.
No, but there's this foundational, however fragile it may have been, that was sort of created through mom and dad's efforts.
100%. every single night before we went to bed, our dad would read us a Bible story every single night. And I still have the books that he would read those Bible stories from. It was incredible. I mean, I think you could probably shove and force religion down people. I think you can, right? And maybe that's what that first church was doing. But my parents had the genuine heart, right? And so they cared, and they wanted us to follow in the steps of the Lord, and so they invested that from their end, and it wasn't a waste, right? Because look,
I love
like
that.
I've got a gun to my head. Who do I cry out to? The person that we're crying out to, my dad's teaching us cry out to every night before bed.
Which I'm sure there's times that mom and dad are like, this is a waste. Right? Like we're putting in this energy and it's not doing anything, you know?
Know, I was just taking a look at the prodigal son story again.
Yeah, 100%.
Think about how long, now as a dad, how many times did that dad go looking down that road?
Yeah, our last guest, Mark Davis, talks about that, right? Like running down the road and throwing your arms around him.
Like how many times did Jonathan Anderson's parents, just open the door and peep Jonathan sleeping, and maybe a prayer is offered, like, man, God, like, or heck, you might be in the streets, right? And your room's empty. Like, man, it'd be cool if Jonathan could figure this out. And it's like, no effort is wasted.
No effort
is wasted. Like God records little efforts.
Yeah.
And recorded,
I would say
stored up, deposits. Here's Jonathan's day. He needs all of it. Withdrawal right now. Boom.
My greatest prayer warriors would be my mom and dad.
Yeah.
From the day I was born to right now. I mean, there's nobody who prays more for me than those parents, right?
Absolutely.
And for all of for all my brothers, so absolutely. I mean, I think I don't think you could probably have better parents than mine, truthfully.
Yeah.
You probably could have had better kids than theirs, but couldn't have better parents than mine.
Yeah. Wow. That's really amazing. I mean, I love that. I love that idea, Mike, as you highlighted that those efforts, right, that your parents were putting in, and eventually that pays off on some level. Man, that's amazing.
Recently, I've had a couple opportunities to go talk to the juvenile hall kids on Wednesdays, right, and I'll share them a little bit of my backstory, and the idea that I'm trying to convey to them is like, that's who I was. That's not who I am.
Right.
And like, hey guys, you're in here. This is not who you are.
Yeah.
You did some stuff. That's what you did, but it is not who you are. And the sooner we can separate those things and work on who you are and who you can become, right? But I think it is interesting, that voice that you heard. What if this anger, what if this thing is Satan and that's trying to keep you from me? That's a real thing.
It's real.
Right? That is a real thing.
Man.
And that contention, that enmity, that rage, that anger. And some he'll rage and some he'll lull away in carnal security, right? But like, he'll take any way he can get that division for sure.
Well, I love that idea too, just change in general, right? Like it's so, to me, it's fascinating. I think that, there's those that'll make those decisions in a quiet moment. And there's those that maybe need a gun in their face, right? To help them make that decision. But man, and I also, I also want to highlight too, Jonathan, you talked about like, having that experience, but not necessarily being all in right away. Right. And I think that's an important thing to highlight too. I mean, Sean McMasters talks about that fits and starts, right? And trying to figure out how to navigate spirituality with, still living the life that you live or being in the environment that you're in, you know what I mean? And I think that's really interesting. And I think it's important because there's people, and maybe we've all been there, right? Where we want to make change, but the change doesn't happen as quick as we'd like it to happen. And just to have that patience with ourselves, like, if we all sat back and we look behind us with some hindsight, we could say, oh my gosh, yeah, like these experiences, this is what got me where I am. But in the middle of it, we're like, dude, I'm failing, I'm not feeling it. So,
yeah. And you know what I dig too, Tyler, we talked before about this idea of being humble, right? Or stripping away some of the things that maybe some of the baggage, some like Jonathan was talking about the music and the old debris that we carry around in our lives. In an instant, when that gun went to your head, that's exactly what that did. Yep. That stripped everything away and nothing else matters. And it's like, for an instant, you were able to capture this, like, I want to, like George Bailey, right? I want to live again. Now, Jonathan, yours was, I don't want to die. There is no difference between I don't want to die and I want to live again, right? Like in the end, it's stripped down to like, this is Jonathan and this is God and nothing else matters.
I'm really curious, Jonathan, like if we can go back to your, the assembly, which still is blowing my mind. Like my mind is spinning on that. But how do you maintain momentum from these experiences, right? To continue on that path, So if we could look from that moment, kind of as you progress in life and you're moving on in life, you're going past high school, how do you maintain momentum, or how do you maintain some level of focus on the things that have become important to you?
Yeah. So, for me, coming out of that, truthfully coming out of that assembly and just seeing like, wow, that's a pretty large impact. Right at that moment, I just decided, I want to go to school and become a youth pastor like Bill, to do for others what he just did for me, right? Yeah. And but hey, I mean, when teachers are on strike for like years at time, and when you're expelled for like a year at time, like you have no education, right? I took the SATs. I didn't pass the SATs, right? Like it was horrible. I could barely read. I couldn't do math. I couldn't do anything. And so I just started applying to schools. And I mean, don't tell them I said this, but the only school that'll accept you without an SAT is Simpson University in Redding, California.
Hey now.
You just need a chance, right? You just need the door open. I just needed a chance.
I saw all I needed, man. So I went 100% loans, student loans, 100% to Simpson University, and this is where the momentum was, right? Like I think I'm trying to do something, but the momentum is when I took my first Old Testament class, Dr. Glenn Schaefer. I took that class, and there was such a divine inspiration. It just came alive, and I knew I've got to change my major. So I switched from youth ministry to Old Testament. Who gets an Old Testament degree?
Old Testament.
You'll never get a job with that, right? Like never, ever. But I'm not thinking about that. What I'm thinking about is exactly what you're saying, momentum.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to this, right? There is this divine revelation. I'm the kid who can barely read. They're giving me like, truthfully, like 8th grade English and even though I'm in college, right? And so for some reason, it was so divinely inspired. When it come time to do a test, I've got classmates asking me to tutor them in the Old Testament. That's nuts, right? So I knew there was something there, right? What was incredible is my faith became my own. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't the churches. It was my own.
So would you tie that, Jonathan, to that moment?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So right. I'm reading scripture for myself. I'm understanding scripture for myself. I'm learning how to live out scripture for myself without anyone else there. Right. And it was phenomenal. I had a professor one day just be like, "Hey, Jonathan, what do you want to be known as one day?" You guys are going to laugh at this, but I was like, I want to be known as a reader. I can't read that well.
I love that.
And he looked at me. He's like, "Well, just pick up a book and start reading." Like, this is literally how he said it. Like, okay. and I did. From that day, I have not gone a single day without reading. And that was 20 years ago, right? So now I'm a prolific reader, prolific researcher, whatever, like.
It's kind of cool. It's like he almost gave you permission, right?
He did, right? He did.
Yeah.
He gave me that permission, where I came from a life where you had to rebel because you didn't have permission. And so
Yeah.
he did. He gave me that permission. It's like, okay, all right, I can do this. Oh, my faith can become my own. And so, it was incredible. I had to learn Hebrew and and be able to read the Bible in Hebrew, right? And Hebrew taught me English. And so it was incredible. It taught me sentence structures. It taught me everything.
Hebrew taught me English. Come on now.
Right?
That has never been uttered on this show before, man.
It did. And eventually I had to go to Israel, right? And so I had to study. I went to Jerusalem University College in Israel. And this whole time, it's exactly what you said. It's momentum. It's building from one thing to the next. I have no vision of what I'm going to do with an Old Testament degree. I don't even care. At that moment, it's just that momentum. Man, God is stirring. He's doing something. My life has changed. How far can we go? And I'm doing it. All on student loans, keep in mind. I don't know how I'm going to pay them back, right?
Yeah.
And so it was incredible. I'll tell you this. The Bible, at the end of my undergrad, the Bible had become a textbook, right? So it lost that devotional approach. It had become a textbook. And I was talking with one of my mentors. I was like, man, how do I regain that devotional approach? And he's like, well, we had been going through, a year of spiritual disciplines. He's like, why don't you, I think you're probably ready to go, spend some time in silence and solitude. It's like, all right. So 2-3 weeks after graduating Simpson, I booked a flight to France. I found a monastery in Taizé, France. I showed up at the door and I was like, hey, I'm here to do some time of silence and solitude. And one of the brothers is like, do you know what you're doing? It's like, nope, but I'm here. And so I spent some time in solitude at this monastery in France. At first, it was absolute sheer hell. Probably worst thing I could have ever done in my whole life. That's what it felt like. And by the end, it was, what I realized is it was God saying, no, we're going to a deeper place. It's a place that is unknown. And we're going to walk through this together. And that's where everything's solidified. It's like, okay, I've got that unshakable faith now. So yeah, that's how the momentum got started and sustained.
I love it, man. I love that when you talk about, because we have this conversation a lot with guests on this podcast where we talk about those moments where we can identify that our parents' faith or the faith of our mentors or the faith of those around us becomes our own faith. And a lot of times it's pinpointed to these dramatic events, right? That we have. And it's interesting, right? Because you share the moment in that fight where you have a gun in your face. You share the moment on the hillside with the wind blowing and the scriptures, right? But the moment that you point to when you say this faith became my own was you spending time in the Bible and understanding the scriptures for yourself. I love that. I love the idea of the journey of faith, right? Because I think a lot of times there's this expectation, at least in a lot of conversations that I have, that, well, God has never hit me with a clap of thunder or a bolt of lightning, or I've never seen an angel, or whatever that looks like to an individual. And you talk about this moment you had when you were 14 or 15, and here you are at Simpson University, and that becomes the moment, right? This span of time creates the faith. And I think that's important to highlight, right? Because I think we live in a time of instant gratification where we say, well, I need to have it now. And the work part of it isn't highlighted as much. And for crying out loud, dude, you got on a plane to go to France and sat in silence for a couple.
Yeah. So Tyler, we have Jonathan, we play around sometimes with unofficial sponsors. We've never had a French monastery as an unofficial sponsor of the Richest Men in Town. So we're going to claim that.
Yeah. Here they are tonight.
That's awesome.
But it's actually it's actually got me thinking about, like, sometimes we might benefit from asking if there's more, because a lot of times, Tyler, like in our previous guest, the gun to the head would have been, that's where faith became my own, right?
100%. Right.
But now we're in this other place where, and I love what you were saying earlier, Tyler, about meeting us where we are,
Right.
because that's what Jesus does, right? Jesus meets you where we are, but then it's like, oh no, Jonathan, there's a deeper place, right? And we talk about our faith, but I love what Jonathan said. He'd like, after that experience with silence and solitude, it was unshakable.
Yeah.
100%. I love that idea.
I love because 2023's got a lot of tremors, right? 2023, our world is a chaotic place. And are we doing the work to get to that place where we're unshakable?
Yeah.
Right? Would Mike Freeman be like, yeah, that guy, I love, number one, I want to be a reader, right? That's a fantastic question. What do you want to be known for? Like, I love that.
Yeah. And I love that he was
like,
like,
I would love to be known as like, man, Mike Freeman, that guy's got unshakable faith.
But you think about that simple answer, right?
Not
it's
there.
like, how do I become a man of faith? You practice your faith.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, how do I become a reader? Well, you read, like that's how you do it. I love that answer too, because I think, and I have this conversation with my kids a lot too. It's, if we can imagine in our mind's eye where we were best in a spiritual sense, right? And sometimes we think back and we go, gosh, that was 10 years ago, or that was 5 years ago, or maybe that was 6 months ago. I like the idea of being, and my goal is to be able to say to myself, if I ask myself that question, it was an hour ago, right? It was a day ago. Like, I want to shorten those gaps, and I want to be able to look. I love that idea of the momentum and just being able to look and say, I'm doing it right now, And it's okay if we have to recall back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 10 days, whatever. But man, if we can shorten those gaps and we can say it was yesterday or was an hour ago, I mean, that's a big deal, right? That's a big deal. I love that. I love that.
That momentum brings me back to this idea of grooves, right? Like, where is the groove? And that's where you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that path, that's going to take you where it needs to take you, versus like trying to do everything or trying to focus on my weaknesses. Where it's like, what's easy to you? Do that.
Yeah.
Right. Go there, find that. So here's my question, Jonathan, because this is, I don't know if we broke this down to you, but we're worldwide, man. We're worldwide.
No.
In fact, your
No,
friends,
you didn't tell me that.
your friends in France might be tuning in, right? But like,
okay, I'm going to log off now.
somewhere in this world is somebody who is listening to your incredible story and is naturally comparing, right? It's what we do. And when you say it was radical and it was instant transformation, someone else is like, well, that's not me, so must not be God, right? God must not be here doing his thing. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I'd say I believe that's probably unique for me. I've got so many people in my community, in my circle. Rarely do I hear someone say there is this instant transformation. Rarely, right?
Yeah.
But there's a process. That momentum. There's this process of walking out faith, living out faith, right? So that when like God finally hit me, but you know what? There was a process from the time someone put a gun to my head to the time that I said, okay, that's it. I'm just giving my entire life to you. There was a gap. That's like about 4-month gap, maybe 5-month gap right there. Yeah. I had to submit to that process. I had to walk through that. It wasn't instant. When I cried out with the gun in my head, God didn't radically transform my life. Nah, I needed to learn something through that process. And that was very key. And there was so much I learned through that. And then, I had this crazy instant transformation when I go to school, but from who I was then to who I am now has been a process. Yeah. And I've had to learn key moments and key things on this journey. That's what it is, man. It's a journey. It's a journey of faith. It's a relationship with God. And I'd say too, look at it just like as a relationship with any normal human being, whether it's a spouse or a close friend, right? You are learning more and more about that person as you go on, and you are changing together with that person. I mean, Man, I love to go into restaurants or the airport even and watch people. And I'll sit there. I'm like, I'm gonna guess. Like if they're in their 80s, I'm gonna guess whose husband and whose wife based off their mannerisms because they're exactly the same every time, right? Like you actually like become one person. The more and more and the longer you are with the person, you start to become one with each other. Your mannerisms, your speech, everything. That's how it is. That's how it is in the faith journey, right? It don't expect it to be. I mean, yeah, I had a radical transformation, but I'm vastly different today than who I was when I had that transformation.
Yeah,
when
and
it's
then
almost
there's
like
that
that's the spark, right? That's the spark, or that's the catalyst.
Yeah. I love that. I think that there's, you know, there's a level of patience, right, that we have to have with ourselves, and I think that we need to be a lot more forgiving of ourselves, a lot more patient with ourselves. When we see a place that or a level that we want to be at, we have to understand there's work, there's blood, sweat, and tears involved in that to get us to that place. And the great thing is, or maybe the frustrating thing is, that the journey continues, right? So I'm sure, Jonathan, you wouldn't say today that you arrived 6 months ago. It was on a Wednesday at 3:00 in the afternoon. I got there. It just continues to go, right?
Man, you know what, you that is such truth. I mean, I recently I was sitting in I have a leadership coach. I was sitting with them and I had this aha moment. I wrote it down, right? Like we so often in life, we want the comforts. We want the easiest route, right? We don't like pain. We don't like conflict, right? And we absolutely stray away from anything that we're afraid of. And what I just wrote it in my journal. The other side of fear is freedom. And the other side of pain is growth. And the other side of conflict is relationship, right? So if you can embrace those and not shy away from them, you are going to experience stronger relationships. You're going to go into unknown territories and conquer them, right? Like we shy away. If I was so afraid that I never got up and spoke on that stage, 200 people wouldn't have come forward, right? And I'm telling you, I was terrified. I was shaking. And that's why I do it today. I mean, I'm afraid every time I get up to do a public speech, but you got to face those fears. It creates growth.
It's on the other side, right?
Yeah, there's freedom. There's freedom, right?
And Mike and I were talking about this before we got together this evening, that this idea of embracing the difficult things, right? Because the difficult things on the other side of that difficulty, whatever that is growth of some kind, right? And I love the idea that the other side of conflict is relationships. Oh, that's awesome, man. I love that. I
love
the
hard things.
You think about that, like, right? Like people just in look at a marriage, right? You have conflict, you have tension, right? You don't give up. You keep going, you work through it, and when you do, you're stronger. Well, guess what? You're gonna have conflict again, you're gonna have tension again. Great, work through it, you're stronger. You just keep building stronger and stronger and stronger. Look at the people who shy away from conflict, who shy away from all that. Man, when it hits, they fold, they crumble. They don't know how to handle it. And so I'm a big proponent of that. I mean, believe me, I don't want to have all the pain and all this stuff. No, not at all. Right? Not at all. But when it's there, I think maybe that's that unshakable faith. You just know that it's going to be better. I don't know.
Well, I would love to. I'd love to dig a little bit here because I mean, we're not even really getting below the surface of what life looks like right now for you. But I do want to. I want to ask this or dig in this dirt a little bit. This idea that when you're about to cross the threshold of your bedroom that day, and you have an experience where you give it up, you give him your life. What confidence, what clarity does that conversation you had way back then with God give you now?
Yeah. Fortunately, I wrote it in my journal, right? And I'm big on journaling, right? Journal your journey. And so I wrote that, and I often look back and say, man, relive that moment, because for me, because that transformation was so drastic, it's undeniable, right? Because I had this crazy experience of telling people how God changed my life, and them responding. It's undeniable, right? I can't deny that, and so I look back at that and I'm like, man, God, like that's not actually faith, because I saw it, right? I saw it firsthand, and I look back, I'm like, okay, I cannot deny that.
That's
real.
evidence.
That's authentic.
That's
It's
not
evidence.
faith. That's
Yeah.
evidence. You were there.
Yeah.
So I have incredible confidence. That's just, and yeah, that when I say I've got this unshakable faith, that it's that whole journey. It's that whole journey. I mean, I can't look back and deny that evidence. That's a good word for it. I can't deny that evidence. And so, nobody can convince me that God didn't change my life. Nobody can convince me that God's not real. It's not happening, right? Like,
and no one can take it from you. You can give it up, but no one can take it from you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you come out of silence and solitude.
Ooh.
You're a Bible scholar. You know Hebrew. You got that Old Testament degree under your belt, maybe. Somewhere there's a lady in your life, right? Or somewhere you meet your wife, right? So help us out with life after the chamber of solitude.
Yeah. I went back to the Bay Area. I started pastoring at a church, and then started doing some street ministry, things like that. Also started teaching at a private school, high school. So just a whole bunch of stuff, right? Trying to figure out how to pay off student loans, really. And that was during the right before the recession hit, right? So about 07, 08, right around there. And so, the private school, about 90% of the parents lost their job. And so they decided they're going to close down the school. They actually came to me and said, hey, if you'd like to become the administrator and try to get the school back, you can have it. I was like, wow. No, absolutely not. So that's a fear I'm not walking through. So yeah, I just decided, man, okay, something's got to change. And at that point, I stopped trusting God's plan and just said, I got to do my own plan. And so I figured, hey, if I do law enforcement and I become a cop, maybe I could work 4 12s, and then I've got like 3 days a week I can volunteer my time in ministry. That'll pay student loans, because being a pastor won't. So, yeah, man, I started going through the police academy, and then there'd be a budget cut. I'd go through another police academy, budget cut. And I'd sign conditional job offers. Oh, we're laying people off. And so finally I just said, you know what, forget this. My wife, we were dating at the time, but she still lived in Redding. And, I just drive up every week and see her. So I said, you know what, they got an academy up there. I'm going to put myself through the academy, and I'm going to go propose to her. So drove up to Redding, proposed, started living at my mother-in-law's house while my wife lived down in Redding, and put myself through the police academy. Graduated. We got married. While I was in the academy, we got married. So I was working days, and I was working grave shift and going through the academy during the daytime. And wow. So it was hard. It was hard. I learned I could go 3 solid days without any sleep. And after that, I would just fall and pass out. So it was crazy, but I could, right? Yeah. And that was crazy without any drugs or anything, like that's a different world. So yeah, we
probably not your best self, day 3.
No, not at all. I got lots of trouble at work on day 3 all the time. I'd just be falling asleep. So yeah, it was incredible. So here's what's amazing. I'll tell you this. I graduate the academy. My wife and I just moved into our first home, which I told her we'll never buy a home until I pay off student loans. I'm so glad she won that battle, because I don't know if we ever would have bought a home.
Yeah.
Pay them off. So we
What's your wife's name? What's your wife's name?
Michelle.
Michelle. Okay.
Yeah. So we bought a home. I just graduated the police academy. I go for a job with Shasta County Sheriff's Office. There were 40 people applied. They boiled it down to 2 people, myself and a guy who was a lateral transfer. He was a sergeant from a different agency. It's like, we're only hiring for 1. And at that moment, I knew, man, I've been trusting my own plan, right? Like I've been, why have I not trusted God in this? And so I just got alone with God, and I was like, okay, God, well, why? Like, why am I doing this, but you keep closing these doors? And so I felt like God saying, what have I designed your heart for? And so I was praying about it. I was like, you know what? It's not law enforcement. That's not where my heart is. That's just me not trusting God with my finances. And so I went to my wife, and this was my conversation. I said, look, babe, I've been praying for years to have faith like Abraham. Like God calls Abraham to go, and he just goes. And I said, what I realized is I trust God with my life, but I don't trust him with yours. I don't trust that he can provide for you. And so I'm trying to do it on my own. And I said, I've got to stop. I've got to trust that God will allow me to always provide for you. And so I said, the law enforcement is not the thing. And she's like, yeah, well, what do you want to do? Let's pray about it. So we prayed about it. I was like, God, I know what my heart is. Open the doors. Next day, I got a call from the executive director at the Good News Rescue Mission, out of the blue. He's like, hey, you don't know me. I don't know you. Someone gave me your resume. If you come work for us, I'll create a position. I'm like, what? Who are you? What is this place? And right. And I knew, I like when he said it, I was like, man, I think my wife writes a check to you every month. You know, give me a tour. Yeah. So I went down, took a tour, and right there, I was like, okay, this is what God called me to. They hired me, and 2 weeks after they hired me, I got a call from CHP and like, hey, our academy's back on. You want to come down with us? Like, nope, I'm right where God has me, man. I'm good. So
I kind of get a lot of Jonah and the Ninevites in this whole story. Right? Yeah. Like, that's kind of giving me that vibe a little bit, you know. But I love that idea of like, you know, sometimes we kind of have tunnel vision, right? And it becomes like, in my experience personally, there's generally a tinge of desperation involved in that as well, right? Like I'm like, okay, you know, let's circle the wagons. Here's how I'm going to resolve this issue. And I'm just going to kind of put my head down and try to like, you know, whack at it for a little while, and we'll see what happens, you know? And I love that idea of clarity, right? Of just being able to say, all right, let's figure out, let's reflect back on blessings, moments, momentum, and let's kind of insert that back into the forefront of this situation. I love that, man.
Well, I think I love the faith like Abraham, almost like, faith like a child. It's like we put conditions.
Yes.
Yeah. I exercise faith for things that I'm dealing with and I'm working with, but I have these other aspects of my life where, I don't use that for that. Oh, that works for that. Yeah. It works everywhere. Right.
Man.
So, you know, and two, like the world is like, it's not about it. What is that quote, right? Find what lights you up, because what the world needs is people doing work that lights them up.
Yeah.
Right. Jonathan Anderson, I'm sure you would have made a fine law enforcement officer. And we've got friends that are law enforcement officers.
Absolutely.
And we absolutely honor that, but that isn't what your heart was designed for.
Yeah.
Right. And you would have probably been miserable. Yeah. You would have been making student loan payments, right? But there's more to life than making student loan payments.
You know, but you know, it's amazing. You know, it's amazing. And I'm glad you said it, because that's what I realized. Like, I just didn't trust that God would let me pay off those student loans and have a job where I could provide for my wife as well, right? And so that was my plan. I'm going to do law enforcement. No, when I submitted though, man, it's incredible. It's incredible. Like, yeah, I wasn't making good money. Nah, but we were able to buy our first house.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. With all the student loans, I was paying $1,000 a month in student loans at the time.
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to, we got part-time jobs. How are we going to, pay for this?
God, this episode is brought to you by Stafford.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for real. You're not
exactly.
But God provided, right? And I remember when Michelle and I were talking about having our first child, and I mean, we all know about that talk. Like that put fear into me, and I'm like, how can we ever afford a child, right? And so you'll like this, we made our A plan, our B plan, our C plan. And then I asked my wife, I was like, you know what, let's hold on a minute. Like, we've got these plans, but are we trusting God if we do that? So I just said, you know what, let's give ourselves a test. Do we believe that God is real? And so we just sat in silence. We're like, yeah, we believe he's real. Do we believe he has our best interests in mind? Yeah, we do. Do we believe that he's good? Yes, we believe all three of those. Well, if we believe those three, we should never worry. If he's real, if he's good and he has our best interests in mind, why are we worried? And so we threw away our ABC plan. We literally ripped them up, threw them away, and said, okay, we're going to trust God. She gets pregnant, and then we went back to A, B, C, D, E, F, and G plan, and then said, okay, hold on, let's do our test again. We gave ourselves a test. We ripped up our plans. We're like, God, we're just going to trust you. Kid you not. When we both said that, I went to work the next day. Executive director sits down at my desk. He's like, hey, man, I just want to let you know we love you. The board loves you. You've been doing such a great job. We want to give you a raise. And he hands me a check with a bonus and a raise. I'm like,
nice. Yeah.
Caesar, you got to hear what I just said, God, I'm just going to trust you. And he's like, well, here you go. God's provided, right? How do you know that? How do you know that? So, and that's been the journey. And I'll tell you what, my wife and I joke, like, we've all, I assume we've all been there. You first get married, you're just getting started in a career. You don't have a lot of money. You want to go out to dinner with friends, but it's like, oh, can we really afford it? Who's paying? Who's not paying? Right. It's awkward when the bill comes, And for us, we're like, we don't like that. We don't want it to be like that. And so we just determined we're always going to pay, and we're always going to say yes to going. And then we just say, you know what, if we truly trust God and we truly believe that he has all the money in the world, we're just going to say we're millionaires. And so my wife and I just started saying, you know what, not to people, but to ourselves. Hey, we're millionaires. We're going to go to dinner with two different couples, and we're paying. Why? Because we're millionaires. We ain't even going to look at the budget, right? Man, that is a value that we have had for the past, what have we been married? 13 years. We have had that value. We have done that consistently, religiously. My student loans are paid off. We're on our second home. I don't make a ton of money where I work, but God has provided in ways that I can't even imagine.
Man, I love that, and I'm coming up to Reading to have dinner with you guys soon.
Come over. But, I'll let Mike pay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I do love? I love it. Let's go Old Testament a little bit, right? I mean, this idea of manna.
Yeah.
And the purpose of manna, right? The purpose of manna wasn't to accumulate. It wasn't to stockpile and who has the most manna. It's just like the daily, right? And like, give us this day our daily bread.
Yeah.
Is a powerful reminder of like, it's a day at a time, right? I love the ABC stuff because so many times we even involve him in the plan development, and we come up to him in prayer and say, hey, this is what I was thinking, or you could do this, or you could do this. And he's like, or I could do this, right? You could do,
Yeah.
you got ABC, he's got L, M, N, you know, like,
or I'll just part the Red Sea and we'll just do
yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah.
You know what
Like,
I mean?
like
Right?
just be with me today.
Yeah.
Be
Yes.
with me today. And the need, you'll get a phone call tomorrow. Like, stuff's going to happen, right? I love that 3-point test too. Is he real? Does he have our best interests in his heart and mind? And is he good?
Yep.
All right.
Man, I gotta tell you this little quick story, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our first son, Kellen, is born, right? Traumatic birth. It was a high risk labor, high risk pregnancy. When she delivered him, he wasn't breathing. They had to put tubes down. Like, part of his lung burst. His heart stopped. Like, just all crazy stuff, right?
New parent nightmare.
Parent nightmare. We are a wreck. And it was a 24-hour labor too. Like, it was nuts. So exhausted, wrecked. He's in the NICU. The doctor's just like, you can't watch what we have to do. You need to go. I go back to my wife and she's like, hey, how's Kellen? I was like, I have no clue. What do you mean? It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. The NICU doctor comes in, clears everybody out. And she says, look, Mr. Anderson, Miss Anderson, I don't know if your son is going to live or if he's going to die. I want to help him live. I'm going to do everything I can to help him live. But in order for me to do that, you have to sign this paper that says, if he dies, you won't hold me liable. And she's like, I'm going to give you a moment to just think about that. And she leaves. And we're just like, what? Are you serious right now? Right there, I looked at my wife and I just said, hey, do we believe God is real? And she's, in our hearts, like, yeah. I was like, do we believe that he's good? Yeah. Do we believe he has our best interests? Yeah. I was like, then why are we worried? And so we just prayed. And our prayer was, okay, God, we want nothing more than to have our brand new first baby and take him home to his nursery. Nothing more. But ultimately, we trust you. We believe you have our best interests in mind. So he's your child. We're giving him to you. And whatever you want to do, we're still going to praise you, right? So this is what's incredible. Every day we'd go into the NICU. I'd open my Bible. I'd lay my hand on him and I'd just start reading these Psalms over him and just blessing him every day. That was on Thursday. That was on Thursday he was born. Friday is Good Friday. And I just felt like God saying in my heart, he's going to come home on Resurrection Sunday. That's when he's coming home. So I went to the NICU doctor. I was like, Dr. Jane, I believe our son is fully healed. I believe God's healed him. I believe he's fine. And I believe he's coming home on Sunday. And she said, Mr. Anderson, your son is not well. and he would not be ready to go home on Sunday. And legally, I couldn't even release him to you on Sunday. His lab work won't be back, all this stuff. She's like, so I'm sorry to tell you, but he will not be home Sunday. Said, okay. Every day I'd come in the next day. Dr. Jane, just want to let you know, God spoke to me, our son's coming home on Sunday. There's a spiritual significance. And she'd say the same thing. Sunday morning, we walk into the NICU. She's there. She's in the NICU. In her office, I knock. Dr. Jane, how are you? Mr. Anderson, how are you? I said, I'm great. I was like, hey, I just want to remind you that I believe God spoke to me. Our son is healed. And he said that he will come home on Resurrection Sunday because there's a significance to this. She started crying. It's like, Mr. Anderson, I believe that you heard the voice of God. I'm going to make sure your son's home by 1:00 this afternoon. And sure enough, he came home. This is the part. We were laying in bed that night, right? Our brand new baby boy right there between us, right? You can't fall asleep because you're like, we're going to crush him. We're going to break him, whatever. And we're laying in bed and we're just like, we're praising God. And our prayer was, no matter what happens, we're still going to praise you. Doesn't matter. And that's what our heart was. And right there, I felt like God spoke. And he's like, Jonathan, do you realize what you've been praying for the past 13 years? Or not 13 years, sorry. However long it was that's how long we've been married. But however long it was. Do you realize what you've been praying for? faith like Abraham. And in my mind, it was, you'd call me to go somewhere and I'll go. Like
Abraham
that's what it
and
was.
Isaac.
Yeah.
Right there. He's like, Jonathan, the ultimate test of Abraham's faith was, do you trust me with your son?
Yeah.
And he's like, and I just like, oh my gosh, babe, do you realize we've been praying for this faith, and God just presented that to us. Do you trust me with your son? And so that, man, that lends to that unshakable faith right there. Whew.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible. And Kellen, how's
I
Kellen today?
made a note, Tyler. I made a note because I actually dig this idea. I have a list of things when I'm talking to youth in church and just trying to help them understand the power of prayer. I like having, some things to pray for. And I made a little note, pray for the faith of Abraham. And I think I'm going to cross that note out after
Yeah.
after I hear what that
Just see how Abraham's faith was tested before you asked for it.
How's Kellen today?
Man, Kellen he's amazing. He's incredible. He is so smart. He's so strong. He's the most kind heart you will ever meet in this world. Seriously, all of his reports from school, every single time, it's just like, Kellen is the most kind person we've ever met. It's amazing. Our youngest son, Liam, we got two. So Kellen's 9, Liam's 6. 2 years ago yesterday, Liam actually had to have his entire skull removed and reconstructed and put back on. And so we walked through that same thing with Liam. And it was the unknown. Like, we didn't know what was going on. And then they just called us and said, hey, worst case scenario just happened. And your son, we've got 3 weeks to do this operation where your son will go permanently blind. And it's like, what? And so, and then his plastic surgeon died on our way down there. And so we had to reschedule 2 weeks. It was like the weirdest, craziest thing. But I'll tell you this, when people were asking us, like, how are you handling it? It was never a test of our faith. Our faith had already been tested. It was never an issue of trust in God or a test of faith. What was incredible is the depth of emotion that we felt in that moment was so overpowering. I mean, I can't even explain that depth of emotion. It was crushing, right? And we had such incredible community who surrounded us that we learned how to find God in community. And it was probably one of the best times in my entire life, being surrounded by all of that community while our son was going through a surgery we didn't know if he would survive. To say that's one of the best times of your life is crazy, but it was so rich. Just that community. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Which he's amazing today too. He's amazing.
Good. I love to hear
you're
that.
sharing that. I'm thinking of last week's guest, Tyler, Mark Davis, talking about he lost an 18-month-old daughter in his own swimming pool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And he said the home felt heavenly, right? Compensatory blessings were poured out upon our family and our community and friends and family circled around us, and
just people coming over. And he tells the story of his neighbor coming over, just planting flowers. Doesn't say anything to him, just plants flowers in his front. I mean, yeah.
There's power in that. There's power in that community.
There is.
Well, speaking of community, Jonathan Anderson, talk to us about what the Good News Rescue Mission is doing for you these days. What is the Good News Rescue Mission, and what does going to work look like for you now?
Yeah, we the high level view bullet pointed. We're 24/7 emergency shelter for anybody experiencing homelessness, right? And then we provide all those supportive services. So your meals, your bed, so you can shelter overnight. We have the shower facilities, medical facility that Shasta Community Health Center partners on and does with us. We've got a dental clinic, just all those emergency basic resources. But then we also do supportive services. So we have the residential long-term drug and alcohol recovery programs. We have educational facilities, computer literacy, job readiness, mental health therapy. So just building this all-inclusive campus. So if somebody is experiencing homelessness or addiction today, it's kind of a one-stop shop. They can go there. They have resources. If we don't have it on site, we have partners off site that we can refer to. So that's what the mission is at the high level view. I started out as the academic director, and just that's what they hired me on, to kind of build that educational facility. I was only in that role for a year and a half, and then they're like, "Hey, God's calling you to be the new CEO," and I'm like, "Heck no, not doing that." But I lost that battle, and that was my Moses moment with God. So I've been doing that for 10 years now, I believe, or maybe 11 years. Yeah, it's my 11th year.
Wow.
So it changed when I became the CEO. It changed because as the academic director, I was one-on-one with people, which is where my heart is.
Right.
My true heart is just with people. Like when Mike, you said you went to juvenile hall, you go to speak. Like I got invited a few months ago to go speak at juvenile hall. And when I walked in, I think Cheyenne and everyone else thought I was nuts, because like they opened that first door, and they got like security cameras and everything. They opened that first door, you walk in and there's the cells, and my heart leaped. I came alive, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel at home. Like that, when you talk about rich moments in life, one of my richest moments in life was speaking at that juvenile hall. Right. And so I love to be with the people who are broken and inspire that hope into their life. So as the CEO, I'm not one-on-one with people anymore. I'm in a political world. I'm lobbying to help get policy changes, to affect change for the people who are right there on the street level. I'm meeting with senators. I'm meeting with Congress. I'm meeting, with our city manager, our county CEOs. That's my everyday job. It's basically the political arena. I love it.
That place can use some hope too.
You're not kidding. You're not kidding. But I love it, right? And so where that came from too is, a year, 2 years after being in that CEO role, I had a massive identity crisis, just massive. Like, I'm the ghetto kid from East Oakland. What does it mean to be a CEO? How do you walk? How do you talk? How do you dress? Like, what are you supposed to do? I didn't go to business school. I got an Old Testament degree. And so I'm at a loss, and I cried out to God. And what I heard God say was, Jonathan, look at King David, right? I didn't call David to be king of Israel in order for him to rule a nation. I don't need him to rule a nation. That's my job. That's what I do. I take care of the nation. Like I did it through the judges. I did it through, I take care of the nation. What I did is I put David in a position of influence where he could influence the entire nation, and he could influence the other kings on how to have a heart after mine, because David was the man after God's heart. And so I felt like God saying, Jonathan, I didn't call you to be CEO in order for you to run an organization. I called you to be in a position of influence where you will sit at the tables, the most influential tables, and you will influence them on how to have a heart, my heart, for the people who you're serving. And so that's my job. I just try to influence people to have God's heart for anyone that's experiencing brokenness. I don't even care if you're in the house or not in the house. If you're broken, God's got a heart for you. And so I just
sign me up, man. I'm influenced. I like it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. That's fantastic. Hey, Jonathan, it's interesting, the mission of the Good News Rescue Mission, right? And all the things that you're working towards and you're trying to accomplish in the community. What, from where you sit, what gives you hope these days?
I think the thing that gives me the most hope right now is it's seeing culture change. I see culture changing in the political arena. I see culture changing in the religious arena. I see culture changing in the government. I see culture changing all around, and it's scary, right? And sometimes it's going to be bad. It's going to backfire. Like we had some policy changes happen in California a few years ago that had a really negative unintended consequence,
Yeah.
But now I see people seeing that consequence and saying, okay, well, let's pivot. Let's change something. Let's address that. And I see so much starting to be addressed today that has not been addressed in the past 50 years.
Wow.
And so there are changes happening culturally in so many different subcultures combined that it inspires me. I'm encouraged. Here's one example, we're a part of an association of, over 300 gospel rescue missions. The culture for, 100 years in these missions is, hey, we're faith-based, so you never partner with the government. And on my end, I'm like, that's stupid, right? Like if government's coming over and saying, hey, we'd like to help you do God's work, come on, take it.
Yeah,
we can do this. And so I see that culture changing, on our board. Our board has changed so much to where, they're trusting because we've got a reputation. We have a rapport that's very good. And so our board's trusting and say, hey, look, if you can do this and do this really well, you have our blessing. And it's opening so many new doors to have tremendous expansion, incredible expansion. I mean, like good example, we just, we're in escrow on 4 different properties right now, and we're building sober living homes. We're building community day centers, dog kennels, all these things that is in partnership with our local government, right? If we didn't have that partnership, we wouldn't be doing those. So how many less people are being helped as a result? So I see culture shifting, and it inspires me and encourages me. And hey, it's scary, but we're going for it.
Oh man, yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So paint me a picture, Jonathan, of a moment where you look around. Maybe it's who you're with, maybe it's the things you're doing, maybe it's the place that you're in, where you tell yourself right here, this moment, this is rich.
I mean, can I paint the picture of the juvenile hall? Because that was rich. Or would you prefer it mission-wide?
Oh, anywhere.
Yeah,
you've already given me a couple of, bringing your first boy home from the hospital, laying with him in your bed, like that's a moment, right?
That's a moment. But I'm going to tell you, it was what I am still hyped up on today. It was walking. That was back in March. So we're in October right now. Back in March, I am still as excited today as I was in March. Walking through those doors at Juvenile Hall, something happened. Like something happened, and just in my soul. When they took all of those kids out onto the yard, like they gave me a little tour.
You had all of them together.
All of them, every person who was in there, they took them all out onto the yard. Some of them had different color shirts on, things like that. They're all sitting down, and you got guards all around, and and they're like, you know what you're gonna speak on? And I was like, I do now. It changed. Like I thought I was gonna say one thing, but now as I'm standing here, it's changed. And that was probably the first time in my life I wasn't afraid to speak, truthfully. And I was so excited, and I just began to speak. I couldn't tell you what I said today. I don't remember. But as I was speaking, I'm telling you, it was like I was just praying, God, can you let my soul tap into their soul? Somehow, like I felt like I gave a piece of my heart to every single person that was there. And then I broke it down, and we went for a little Q&A time. And I think I made every single child there talk.
Wow.
Even people who I could tell, like, this dude is a Norteño who's only 16 years old and he's probably from LA.
Yeah.
He ain't gonna talk to anybody, but you know what? You're gonna talk today. It was phenomenal. It was incredible. I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know why that was so rich. I guess because that was my life. That's who I was. I was the person sitting in that chair, but I didn't have anybody coming to tell me there was a different hope, that you could have a different story.
Yeah.
I didn't have that.
I love what you say about, having your soul tap into their souls, right? There's something about those moments where we open ourselves up to full exposure, right? And we just say, hey, here it is. This is me, from top to bottom. And
That's
this
funny.
This is me from top to bottom, but this is my, this is my heart, right? And we had a good friend of this show that told us one time that vulnerability is the cornerstone of friendship, right?
Yeah,
and
come
I
on,
think
yes.
when we have those moments, I as you're describing it, Jonathan, I'm like, yeah, that's rich. Like, that's it, man. That's it. And I love that.
We had a genius on this show say that you can't fake authenticity.
we did have that very profound moment that we all experienced together. So...
Yes. You know what? You're so right, Mike. Like, I realize that now. Like, when I say I'm so, like, I get fearful when I get up and I do a public speech, right? I'm fearful. And there's that anxiety before every public speech, probably because I feel like I'm trying to fake it, right? But when I went to juvenile hall, I wasn't fearful because it was authentic. There was nothing to fake. That's the life I lived. That's the life that we're going to talk about.
I love that, man. Absolutely.
I think you're on
so many times, right? It's like that quote where genius is the perseverance, and you're on the dashed line between failure and glorious success, and you don't even know it. And sometimes these kids are in these spots, or sometimes we're in these spots where we're just like, man, I'm done, right? I'm the opposition, the adversity, the resistance. I'm done. And it's like, man, you are 3 inches away from mother lode.
Yep.
Right? Keep digging.
Yeah, keep digging.
And these kids are, they're same situations. They're looking around and they're thinking, I'm at bottom. And I'm like, man, this is a great place to launch from right here.
Such a great place to launch from.
Great place.
Yeah. Hey, anytime you want me to come in with you,
Let's go. Wednesdays.
I'll go hang out with you.
Wednesday morning.
So good. Okay. That's so good.
So, Jonathan, this show, it's important for us we talk about honoring, right? And honoring those people in our lives that have been influences, that have helped us along the way. You've talked about Bill Smith. You've talked about your mom and dad. You've talked about Michelle. You've talked about Kellen and Liam and all these people that are in your life. Is there anyone else that you'd like to shout out and honor here in this space?
You know what? There is. Yeah, I'd like to huge honor to, he's local, Dr. Ray John. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the name. He started Bishop Quinn High School, St. Francis Middle School. Dr. Ray John, he has been my mentor for the past 11 years. When I started as the academic director, he was just retiring, and came in and sat down at my desk, and he introduced himself. He says, well, I'm Ray John. I'm an Irish Catholic Marine, and I have killed for a living. You going to have a problem with that? I was like, nah,
great
buddy.
Intro, man.
I was like, I'm an Irish boy from East Oakland, so we're good. Right. And little did I know, like he actually, he grew up South City, San Francisco. He was a Catholic school administrator at St. Joe's, at St. Elizabeth's. Like, he taught at St. Mary's. Like, this dude, he was flown to the White House and honored by the president and vice president as the top educator in the nation.
Wow.
And then they asked him, like, so what are you going to do next? He's like, well, I'm giving you my resignation and I'm going to go find out what God wants me to do next. And they, him and Maggie moved to Redding, California, to start Bishop Quinn High School.
That's amazing.
So this guy has taught me a tremendous amount about resiliency, about leadership, about adversity. He's been my confidant. He's guided me through a lot of hell that I've experienced over the past 10 years, right? Just incredible. Love him dearly. Yeah.
Sounds like Dr. Ray John. His days are numbered, man. I'm coming after him.
Yeah, we want him on this podcast.
You're going to have a handful. Oh, he's incredible. He would do it, but you will have your hands full. So we went through our top 5 best leaders we've ever known and the top 5 worst leaders we've ever known. And we wrote them down, and then we wrote down what are the top 5 characteristics of each one. For his top 5 and my top 5, each of them shared one characteristic in common across the board, and it was the ability to tell great stories.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, but they all shared it. And I'll tell you, he is the best storyteller I've ever met.
Oh, come on.
He'd be so good.
I love it, man. I
so
love
good
that.
for your podcast.
Yeah. Come on now. Let's go. That's amazing, man. That's amazing. Well, I love that.
Hey.
I love the idea of just having those kind of pillars in our lives, right? That Mike, you talk a lot about lower lights and those individuals that guide us to the places we need to be. And, thank God for people like Bill Smith and Ray John, right? That play a part as those lower lights. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, this has been a treat. Blink of an eye, we've almost had 2 hours pass. And in another blink of an eye, we're going to be sipping eggnog watching It's a Wonderful Life. And we love It's a Wonderful Life. And we love the character of George Bailey. We love the lessons of the life of George Bailey. And that has been the influence for us walking around our lives with eyes open to see people living lives like yours that draw our attention. And your life draws a lot of attention, Jonathan. I think a lot of people appreciate you. I think a lot of people appreciate the influence that you have in this community that I love. And Tyler's not going to lie. He loves this community too. He's just distanced himself from it, but he probably thinks about it all the time. Man.
I do love it. Amen, brother.
So Tyler, where are you at, Tyler? Where are you?
I'm in San Diego. In San Diego.
Oh man.
Tough.
I feel that's the most beautiful place in California.
I think that the far north where you guys are at is so beautiful. And then of course I've got a soft spot in my heart for San Diego, but you ever down this way, dinner's on me. That's our rule, right, Mike?
That is.
Jonathan
will drive. Jonathan will have to drive.
Yeah.
But Tyler will buy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Deal. That's
a
deal.
So George Bailey goes through this journey, right? George Bailey goes through these trials and this adversity, and he gets to a place where he's ready to give up, right? He's ready to give up God's greatest gift. And through some inspiration, he has the opportunity to see what the world would be like without him if he were to never exist. And it's a scary place. And he comes to himself, kind of like the prodigal son, right? He comes to himself and he goes back to that bridge and he just offers a prayer and he wants to live again. And no circumstances have changed in his life. There's a warrant for his arrest. He's short $8,000, right? Potter's still around, but everything has changed because he now sees purpose in life, right? He now sees what life's all about. We love the closing scene where Harry Bailey, George's war hero younger brother, raises the glass and toasts George as the richest man in town. We love the irony of that because George is not the richest man in town, right? As the world sees it. But we're about a different kind of rich, right? These 2 hours have been a different kind of rich. And I feel like I've been blessed hanging out with you, but we always end every episode with this question. So Jonathan Anderson, what does it mean to you to be considered the richest man in town?
Man, such a good question. For me, it's having a family that I absolutely love, a family that loves me, and having an incredible community. For me, richness comes from that community that I have. And it's deep, it's robust, it's beautiful. That's it, man. It's my family, my community. Oh, yeah.
You know, behind every rich man, Tyler, is an incredible wife. And I think about where you would be, Jonathan, if that gun situation would have gone different. I think about that. I think about where you'd be if you didn't meet Bill with one L. I think about where you would be if in those heart-to-heart conversations with Michelle, she didn't share your faith. Right? And you talk about yoked, and you talk about in this thing, who am I in the foxhole with? I just want to give a shout out to Michelle, because she sounds like a remarkable person as well. So I love your answer. I love your answer. And I think that's the work, right? We got 24 hours in a day. How much are we dedicating to family and community, right? And I think that's powerful.
Loved it, man. Jonathan, this has been a blast. I loved being able to spend some time with you and get to meet you. I know we're on opposite sides of the state, but man, I love your words of wisdom. I mean, I feel like my life is enriched from the time that I've been able to spend with you tonight. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you.
We got some work to do.
Yeah, and the good work that you're doing, man. And hey, can we just ask this one question real quick? What can people do to support the Good News Rescue Mission? What can we do to tie people into that?
Yeah, look us up, research us, learn. If you're in the community, learn what we're doing and advocate for what we're doing. That's probably the biggest thing, man. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about what we do or don't do, and a lot of false rumors. So yeah, learn the truth of what we're doing and then advocate. It's inspiring. It's awesome.
Awesome, man. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll drop it in the chat. We'll drop it in the notes so people can definitely tune in from wherever they are to learn more about the work you're doing out there.
Yeah.
Hey, we appreciate you, man. This has been a blast.
Hey, let's be real. This is tip of the iceberg.
Amen, brother. We
got to get this guy back, right?
I'd love to come back. This has been a blast, man. And
I would love to get into how
talking to you
Thanks,
guys,
man.
I would love to get into what Israel was like, right? So definitely bringing you back.
Yeah,
Israel was awesome. Yeah, we'll have to do that one.
Yeah, we got a whole nother show. I got a couple shows. I got to dig into this this high school talk that you gave, man. I mean, I'm still spinning off of that.
I'm gonna go find the shirt. I'll take a picture of the shirt and text
that's
it
what I'm
to you guys.
talking about. Yes.
I would buy one of those shirts right now. Buy one of those shirts.
That's hilarious.
Because I'm 100% agreeing with Jonathan right now.
That is great.
Hey, man, we appreciate you. It's been a blast.
Thank you, guys. This has been awesome. Just awesome. Yeah, appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a great night, man.
All right. See you guys.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.